Well, thank you all for being here this morning. A beautiful spring day and a holiday weekend. I'm rather impressed with how many people showed up today. And I know that we all are anxious and look forward to the time when our minister, Russell Elliman, is back in the pulpit. But I appreciate your being here today. I'd like to start my reflection. First of all, I'd like to say, looking at next week's reflection, Don Fielding and I did not get together and coordinate this. This is one of those serendipitous events. I'd like to start my reflection this morning with a reading. Over a period of 4 years, the National Public Radio aired a program called This I Believe. It was done in a tribute to a program by the same name, originally produced and aired by, in the 1950s, also along the same lines. The following was presented by a lady named Eve Birch in 2009. Eve says, I used to believe in the American dream that meant a job, a mortgage, cable, credit, warranties, success. I wanted it and worked toward it like everyone else, all of us separately chasing the same thing. One year, through a series of unhappy events, it all fell apart. I found myself homeless and alone. I had my truck and $56. I scoured the countryside for some place I could rent for as cheap as possible. I came upon a shack in an isolated hollow 4 miles up a winding road over the Potomac River in West Virginia. It was abandoned, full of broken glass and rubbish. When I pried off the plywood over the window and climbed in, I found something I could put my hands to. I hadn't been alone for 25 years. I was scared, but I hoped the hard work would distract and heal me. I found the owner and rented the place for $50 a month. I took a bedroll, a broom, rope, a gun, and cooking gear. I cleared a corner to camp in while I worked. The locals knew nothing about me, but slowly they started teaching me the art of being a neighbor. They dropped off blankets, candles, tools, and canned deer meat. And they began sticking around to chat. They'd ask me if I wanted to meet Cousin Albie or go fishing, maybe get drunk sometime. They started to teach me a belief in a different American dream. Not one of individual achievement, but one of neighborliness. Men would stop by with wild berries, ice cream, truck parts, and bullets to see if I was up for courting. I wasn't, but they were civil anyway. The women on that mountain worked harder than any I'd ever met. They taught me the value of a whetstone to sharpen my knives, how to store food in the creek and keep it cold and safe. I learned to keep enough for an extra plate for company. What I had believed in, all those things that were necessary accoutrements for a civilized life, were non-existent in this place. Up on the mountain, the most valuable possessions were my relationships with my neighbors. After 4 years in that hollow, I moved back into town. I saw that a lot of people were having a really hard time losing their jobs and homes. With the help of a real estate broker I chatted up at the grocery store, I managed to rent a big enough house to take in a handful of people. It's 4 of us now, but over time, I've had 9 come in and move on to other places from here. We'd all be in shelters if we hadn't banded together. The American dream I believe in now is a shared one. It's not so much about what I can get for myself. It's about how we can all get by together. There was once a young couple engaged to be married. As it happened, the bride was a devout Christian, while the groom was a dedicated member of the Unitarian Universalist denomination and a progressive humanist. What if it could happen? After a long day of shopping and planning for the wedding, the bride and her mother found some quiet time together. The young woman began crying. "Oh, Mother, I don't know if this relationship will work out," she bemoaned. "I'm contemplating marriage to a man who doesn't believe in God the way I do. He doesn't even believe there's a hell." The mother-in-law-to-be, in her most nurturing voice, reassured the despondent bride, "Don't worry, dear. I'm certain that between the two of us, we'll teach him all he needs to know about hell." This little parable points out a fundamental, or perhaps essential aspect of human nature. That is, the need to believe, the need to cleave to those beliefs, and the need to associate with people who share those or similar beliefs. Over the years, I've developed something of a personal theory that there really is no such thing as having no belief. In other words, everyone believes in something. And moreover, everyone feels compelled to share what they believe, especially beliefs associated with religion or politics, even if the recipient of that information couldn't care less. Maybe you've been on the receiving side of a religious witnessing. However, this personal theory includes the possibility of growth and enlightenment for both the sharer as well as the sharee. I think this is especially true if the sharing is a two-way street, a dialogue. The value of such a process comes from the opportunity to examine our own beliefs and belief systems, to metaphorically hold them up to the exposure of new information or different paradigms. I'm in no way suggesting that such a dialogue or conversation is easy. Having such a conversation with someone who holds a belief diametrically opposite to my own can be a real challenge. Okay, for those of you who know me well, it can be a real challenge for me if their beliefs are only slightly different. But I believe that engaging in the process, even when difficult or when it seems useless, has some redeeming value. Perhaps the value comes in a change in my beliefs. Yes, there have been times in my life when I have come to a new and hopefully more enlightened understanding that has changed my belief system. And yes, some of those changes were uncomfortable. Okay, they were painful as hell. Maybe there is value in the times when I have persuaded others to my beliefs, or at least convinced them to consider my paradigm. Or perhaps there has been value in simply standing for what I believe in the face of rejection from boorish or closed-minded bigots. In order for me to assess value of exchange of beliefs with others or come to some kind of understanding, I personally have a need to analyze the nature of beliefs, especially my own. To start with, I've developed my own definition of belief. I define belief as conclusions that I've come to in the absence of definitive data that helps me fill in the gaps or deal with life circumstances, or which makes me feel good about some of my life decisions, or which justifies my prejudices. Keeping this definition in mind, I've categorized my beliefs into three general groups. The first being my beliefs with absolutely no foundation in fact. An example of this category would be my belief that talking to my comatose mother as she lay dying somehow made her passing easier. Since she could not communicate her thoughts to me, I will never know if, in fact, what I did benefited her or if she was even aware of my presence. The belief simply makes me feel good, and it does no one any harm. However, you'd be surprised at the backlash I sometimes get when I share my feelings about this belief. I've discovered that there are those who have had similar experiences and have similar beliefs. It seems that if I call into question my own belief with the fact that I can never know what my mother was feeling at the time of her death, I am therefore calling into question the validity of their belief. This issue was especially clear to me when I was once watching a panel discussion on PBS. The panel included the likes of Deepak Chopra and some well-renowned scientist whose name escapes me. Scientists with very few exceptions seldom become celebrities, and so their names are easily forgotten. The topic of the discussion was the need of a belief in God. The scientist had very little to say, apart from the fact that he was okay with anybody believing in God if it was their individual need to do so. When he articulated this point of view, I thought Deepak Chopra was going to jump out of his skin. He began yelling at this gentleman, who was at once taken aback and a bit amused at Dr. Chopra's reaction. It's this category where I would place pretty much all of religious beliefs. And it is the category of beliefs that seems to result in the most heated and sometimes violent debate. The next category of beliefs for me, and the category where I classify the vast majority of my personal beliefs, is the beliefs that have some verifiable factual data. The problem is this data may be corrupted by incompleteness, incorrect information, or perhaps information that's skewed. Example, I believe that the Koch brothers are essentially bad people. Now, I've never met either of them. I've never even met anybody who knows them personally. And most of my information I have about them come from people like Rachel Maddow or Jon Stewart. This is the category of belief most open for change if there's compelling information that I am in error, and if I'm willing to consider new information. It is the sharing of beliefs in this category that seems to be the cause of most political arguments. Finally, there are my beliefs that are well grounded in scientific data, rationality, or absolute empirical knowledge. An example of this type of belief would be my belief in evolution. The scientific evidence is clear, thoroughly reviewed, and rational. There is very little possibility that I will ever be dissuaded from this belief in favor of another, such as intelligent design. Needless to say, this is the smallest group of my beliefs because there are simply precious few absolutes in my life. So, I believe humans need to believe. We also need to challenge our beliefs. We need to appreciate the beliefs of others, and we need to understand that sometimes a belief is just a point of view. My late father had a way of putting it that sticks with me today. At times he would spontaneously ask me, "Son, do you believe?" I would dutifully respond, "Do I believe what?" He would come back with, "Do you believe that the world is round?" "Yes, sir, I believe the world is round," I declare with conviction. "So," he'd say, "what you're trying to tell me is you're always on the ball." You see, it's just a point of view. So, keep believing. Keep growing in your beliefs. And keep standing up for what you believe. As we rise in spirit to sing our closing hymn, number 89, Come My Way.